all for him to dismiss me like background noise. The client representatives shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact as Preston continued presenting projections I knew were catastrophically flawed. The Eastern Regional Tax Amendment would destroy everything he was promising. As he boasted about 30% growth with unearned confidence, I pulled out my notepad. 2 lines. That's all it would take. I slid the folded paper across to Adira, the lead client representative. She read it, checked something on her tablet, then stood abruptly. Meeting adjourned, she announced. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. What I'm about to share isn't just a story of workplace revenge. It's about what happens when talented people are systematically silenced. Listen until the end, because what I did next changed not just my career, but transformed an entire company culture that had been suffocating innovation for years. My name is Merritt Voss. At 28, I was the youngest financial analyst ever hired at Waterstone Consulting. With degrees in economics and data science, I'd turned down offers from 3 top firms because Waterstone promised a meritocracy where ideas mattered more than seniority. That promise evaporated during my first week. I'm naturally observant. My grandmother called it having third eye vision for problems others miss. I noticed patterns, discrepancies, and opportunities that hovered just beyond most people's awareness. This talent made me an excellent analyst, but a target for those threatened by competence they couldn't control. The trouble started exactly 7 months before that fateful meeting. During routine compliance checks, I discovered a regulatory blind spot in our accounting methodology that could have triggered federal penalties. Nothing criminal, just an oversight in how contingent liabilities were being calculated across international accounts. Simple fix, potentially catastrophic if ignored. I drafted a detailed report with correction protocols and hand-delivered it to Preston, my direct supervisor. His response? A cursory nod and, "I'll look into it." 3 days later, all accounting teams received an urgent directive to implement new compliance measures. The memo came from Preston, word for word from my report, with his signature at the bottom. At the monthly all-hands meeting, the CEO personally thanked Preston for his exceptional vigilance in protecting company interests. Preston received a $15,000 performance bonus. I received nothing, not even acknowledgement that the discovery had been mine. "That's how things work here," whispered Zoe, the only colleague who'd befriended me. "Documentation is worthless unless your name carries weight." I convinced myself it was a one-time occurrence. Perhaps Preston meant to mention my contribution but forgot in the rush to implement changes. I doubled my efforts, arriving at 6:30 each morning to analyze market trends before meetings, staying until security did their final rounds at night. 3 months into my tenure, I identified a sustainability issue in our supply chain approach that was creating unnecessary vulnerability for clients. Environmental regulations were shifting across European markets, and our strategy left clients exposed to compliance gaps that would emerge within 18 months. Again, I prepared a comprehensive analysis with alternative approaches. This time, I submitted it through official channels, uploading to the shared project drive with proper attribution and sending notification emails to the entire strategy team. 2 days later, my report disappeared from the company archives. Server maintenance claimed it when I inquired. Some files were temporarily misplaced. 1 week later, Preston led a presentation to senior leadership about emerging sustainability considerations in our approach. My entire analysis appeared slide by slide, graph by graph, with my name erased from every attribution line. When questions arose about methodology, Preston smoothly explained the analytical process I had developed as if it were his brainchild. The next day, his office moved to the corner suite with windows overlooking the harbor. I confronted him privately, voice shaking despite my rehearsed composure. "I would appreciate acknowledgement for my sustainability analysis," I said, standing in his doorway while he admired his new view. Preston swiveled his chair slowly. "Acknowledgement? Waterstone is a collaborative environment, Merritt. No single person owns ideas here. They belong to the team. Besides, your initial draft needed significant refinement before presentation. Consider this a learning opportunity in how to properly position findings." The refinement he mentioned? Changing the font and adding his logo to the header. Each week brought new variations of the same pattern. In team meetings, I'd begin explaining an insight only to have Preston interrupt, "Let's circle back to that later." Later never came. Or he'd redirect, "We need to focus on primary concerns now." My concerns never made the priority list. When clients were present, the dynamic worsened. If I spoke, Preston would subtly shake his head, signaling disapproval, undermining my credibility before I could establish it. After 5 months, the weight of invisibility followed me everywhere. I'd stare at myself in bathroom mirrors, checking if I was still physically present. I'd speak deliberately louder in meetings, only to watch attention slide past me like water off glass. My confidence eroded. I began second-guessing analyses that once came naturally. Sleep became elusive. My grandmother, who had raised me with stories of her own battles in male-dominated academia, noticed the change during our weekly calls. "You sound hollow, little bird," she said one Sunday evening. "Remember what I taught you. Those who silence others fear what might be heard." Her words stirred something in me. The following morning, I started documenting everything, keeping meticulous records of my contributions, timestamps of file submissions, and notes from every interaction with Preston. I began BCCing myself on all communications and saving offline copies of my work. I wasn't planning revenge yet, just creating accountability where institutional structures provided none. The quarterly strategy meeting with Elmstead Industries represented Waterstone's biggest opportunity that year. Elmstead was considering consolidating their consulting services, and our presentation would determine whether we secured exclusive rights to their business across North America, a $30 million contract minimum. For 3 months, our team prepared. I was assigned to analyze market inefficiencies that might impact growth projections. Preston made it clear, this was my chance to prove my value to the firm. I threw myself into the research, identifying a crucial regulatory development, the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment that would fundamentally alter the profitability equation for service providers in Elmstead's sector. This wasn't public knowledge yet. I'd discovered it through painstaking analysis of legislative committee transcripts and regulatory drafts. The amendment would invalidate our entire growth strategy unless we restructured our approach. I prepared an alternative framework that would not only protect Elmstead from the tax impact, but potentially leverage it for competitive advantage. The night before the presentation, I submitted my findings to Preston. His response came at 11:43 p.m. Received. Will review before meeting. As I entered the conference room the next morning, Preston avoided eye contact. The presentation deck loaded on the main screen didn't include any of my tax amendment findings. When I tried to whisper a question, Preston moved to the opposite side of the room. 12 executives from Elmstead sat alongside Waterstone's senior leadership team. Our CEO made introductions, then turned the floor over to Preston. He launched into the presentation, highlighting unprecedented growth opportunities, competitive advantages, and profitability projections, all of which would collapse under the pending tax changes. 20 minutes in, during a transition between segments, I raised my hand. Before we continue, there's a critical regulatory factor. That's when Preston cut me off with those dismissive words, "We don't need junior input." As Adira read my note about the tax amendment and adjourned the meeting, Preston's face transformed. The composed, confident facade cracked, revealing confusion, then panic, then fury as understanding dawned. The other executives froze, uncertain what had transpired but recognizing the seismic shift in the room's dynamics. "What amendment?" Preston demanded, voice higher than usual. Adira held up my note. "This tax revision apparently changes everything about the approach you've been presenting. Strange that your junior team member knew about it when you didn't." Preston turned to me, eyes narrowed. "This is highly inappropriate. If you had concerns about the presentation, proper channels exist." "The same channels where my sustainability report disappeared?" I asked quietly. The Waterstone CEO interrupted, face tight with controlled anger. "Let's take a 15-minute break. Merritt, Preston, my office." "Adira, would you and your team mind waiting in the client lounge?" As everyone filed out, Zoe passed behind me, whispering, "Holy hell, Merritt. If you're still with me, I need you to understand something crucial. This moment wasn't about triumph or vindication. It was terrifying." My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed our CEO down the hallway, aware that I'd just potentially destroyed my career to protect a client from misinformation. But sometimes integrity demands risking everything you've worked for, especially when systems designed to recognize merit have failed. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the bell icon for notifications, because what happened next transformed not just my position, but the entire power structure at Waterstone. The CEO's office felt unnaturally quiet after the chaos of the boardroom. Novia Elmsbrook, our CEO for the past 8 years, motioned for us to sit while she remained standing, a power dynamic I'd observed her use only during serious disciplinary discussions. "Explain," she demanded, looking between us. Preston recovered first. Merit circumvented protocol and undermined our presentation with unvetted information. This kind of insubordination. "The Eastern Regional Tax Amendment passed final committee last week," I interrupted, voice steadier than I felt. "It recategorizes knowledge-based consulting services under Section 4.3 of the Commercial Code, imposing a 22% surcharge on cross-border transactions. The projections we presented to Elmstead assumed a 6% tax burden. This amendment would eliminate their profit margin entirely under our proposed structure." Novia turned to Preston. "Did you review this information before today's meeting?" Preston hesitated. "Merit submitted some speculative findings last night. There wasn't sufficient time to properly validate." I reached into my portfolio and removed a printed email. I identified this issue 3 weeks ago during preliminary research. "This is my initial notification to Preston, dated March 5. I handed it to Novia. I've sent 7 follow-up communications since then, with increasing urgency." Preston's face flushed. Those analyses were inconclusive. "And this," I continued, retrieving another document, "is my comprehensive amendment impact assessment submitted yesterday, showing exactly how it affects Elmstead's business model." I placed it beside the email. "The amendment text is publicly available in legislative records. Validation requires 20 minutes of research." Novia scanned both documents, expression hardening. "Preston?" He straightened his tie. "With respect, Novia, these regulations pass committee all the time without becoming law. Alarming our clients over speculative tax changes is irresponsible. My judgment was to wait for confirmation before." "Section 4.3 received executive signature yesterday afternoon," I said quietly. "It becomes enforceable July honest. Elmstead's fiscal calendar makes them immediately vulnerable." The CEO's gaze snapped to me. "How do you know it received signature? That wouldn't be public yet." "My grandmother serves on the Regional Economic Advisory Board. While she doesn't discuss confidential matters with me, their public meeting yesterday included announcement of signature achievements. I verified through official channels this morning before the presentation." Preston exploded. "This is exactly my point. She's using family connections to access information, then presenting it as analysis." "Enough." Novia raised her hand, silencing him. "Preston, wait outside. I need to speak with Merit alone." After he left, Novia settled into her chair, studying me with recalibrated attention. 7 months at Waterstone, correct?" I nodded. "And before that?" "Data analytics at Westford University's Economic Policy Institute, 3 years." She tapped my impact assessment. "This is thorough work. Why haven't I seen your name on project submissions before today?" The question unlocked something in me. Perhaps the realization that nothing could make my position worse than it already was. "Because my name gets removed before documents reach your level," I replied. "The accounting compliance protocol from my first month? Originally my work? The sustainability framework presented last quarter? My analysis. The client retention strategy for Harlow Manufacturing? My research." Novia's expression revealed nothing. "Serious accusations, Ms. Voss. I have documentation for everything. Original submissions with metadata, communication records, witness statements from team members." She nodded slowly. I suspected something similar was happening within the junior analyst ranks. I didn't realize it had become this systematic. She pressed her intercom. Rena, please ask Adira from Elmstead to join us, and have security escort Preston to HR for processing. My heart stuttered. Processing? We'll discuss that after addressing our client's situation. She studied me again. You placed yourself in significant professional jeopardy today, Merritt. What made you finally take such a risk? I considered carefully before answering. Elmstead would have lost millions implementing our flawed strategy. I couldn't let that happen, regardless of personal consequences. Even knowing you might be terminated for insubordination? Integrity isn't conditional on job security. Something shifted in Novia's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. Before she could respond, Adira entered. Ms. Layton, Novia greeted her. I apologize for today's irregularities. Adira settled into the chair Preston had vacated. Actually, I'm intrigued. Your junior analyst just prevented us from making a catastrophic strategic error. She turned to me. The tax amendment would have devastated our implementation timeline. How did you identify it when it barely cleared committee? For the next 30 minutes, I explained my analytical approach, walking through the amendment's implications and outlining the alternative structure I'd developed to navigate the new tax landscape. Adira asked incisive questions, while Novia observed our exchange with growing interest. When I finished, Adira turned to Novia. We'd like Merritt to lead the revised proposal team. Novia nodded. Consider it done. And one more thing, Adira added. Elmstead's board has been concerned about Waterstone's approach to diversity of thought. Today demonstrated exactly why. Our new contract will include stipulations about inclusive decision-making processes. After Adira left, Novia leaned forward. Congratulations, Merritt. You've just helped secure our largest client relationship while simultaneously exposing a significant leadership problem. What happens now? I asked. Preston has been terminated, effective immediately. His behavior violates our ethical standards and, frankly, demonstrates incompetence we cannot afford. She tapped her computer screen. I'm reviewing your personnel file. Your performance metrics are exceptional, yet your advancement recommendations are surprisingly negative. Those evaluations come from Preston. Indeed. Consider them invalidated. Novia stood. As of today, you're promoted to Senior Strategy Analyst, reporting directly to me until we restructure the department. You'll lead the Elmstead revision team with full authority to select your members. The shift was so sudden I struggled to process it. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank me yet. You've created quite the disruption. Some will resent you for it. She smiled slightly. Though based on today's performance, you can handle yourself. Walking back to my desk felt surreal. Employees whispered as I passed. News of the boardroom confrontation already circulating through office channels. Zoe waited by my cubicle, eyes wide. They escorted Preston out with a security guard, she whispered. His access badge was deactivated before he reached the elevator. What happened? Before I could answer, my email notification chimed. The message from Novia confirmed my promotion and included calendar invitations to leadership meetings previously closed to me. The final line read, Select your Elmstead team members by EOD. Unrestricted choice. Power arrived with dizzying speed. By evening, I'd assembled my team, not from the usual senior ranks, but from overlooked analysts whose ideas had been similarly suppressed. Dominique with her revolutionary pricing models, Elio and his behavioral economics insights, Zoe's unparalleled knowledge of regulatory patterns. We worked through the night redesigning the Elmstead proposal from scratch. When morning came, we presented our revised strategy to Novia. She approved it without changes. This is exceptional work, she acknowledged. I've clearly been looking at the wrong metrics for identifying talent. The transformation extended beyond my personal situation. 3 days after the incident, Novia announced a company-wide restructuring. New meeting protocols required documented input from all team members. Anonymous feedback channels were established for reporting idea theft. Performance reviews would now include peer assessments, not just supervisor evaluations. Most significantly, the company implemented what became known as the VOS protocol, named, surprisingly, after me. The protocol mandated that all client presentations include sections specifically delivered by junior team members, ensuring visibility across hierarchical levels. Preston's departure revealed the extent of his suppression. 17 junior analysts came forward with similar experiences of having their work claimed by him. 3 senior managers who had enabled his behavior were demoted. The culture began shifting, slowly, then with gathering momentum. 6 weeks later, we presented our revised strategy to Elmstead's full board. The room was different from the one where I'd been silenced, larger, with Elmstead and Waterstone representatives interspersed rather than divided by company lines. I stood at the front, no longer relegated to the background. The Eastern Regional Tax Amendment created what initially appeared to be an insurmountable challenge. I began. However, our analysis reveals it's actually an unprecedented opportunity for market differentiation. For the next hour, my team and I outlined our approach. The board members leaned forward, engaged with questions that reflected genuine interest rather than skepticism. When we concluded, Elmstead's CEO stood. "This is precisely the innovative thinking we've been seeking. We're prepared to move forward with implementation immediately." The contract they signed exceeded the original scope by 40%, with a 5-year commitment instead of 3. As we gathered our materials afterward, Adira approached me privately. "That day in the boardroom," she said, "when you passed me that note, what made you so certain I would read it rather than hand it to your supervisor?" I considered her question. "The meeting dynamics. You noticed when Preston cut me off, there was a micro-expression of disapproval you couldn't quite hide. I calculated that your commitment to making sound business decisions would outweigh professional courtesy." She laughed. "Perceptive. And correct." She handed me her business card with a personal number written on the back. "When you eventually decide to move beyond Waterstone, call me. Talent like yours should always have options." The months that followed brought changes I couldn't have imagined. My promotion came with an office. Ironically, the same corner suite Preston had occupied. I found little satisfaction in the symbolism, however, and requested a different space with a collaborative layout for my team. The most profound changes were internal. The constant anxiety that had become my daily companion gradually subsided. I rediscovered my analytical confidence, no longer second-guessing insights that once came naturally. Sleep returned. My grandmother noticed the difference immediately. "Your voice has found its home again, little bird," she said during our weekly call. "I hear the strength in it." Not everyone embraced the new order. Several senior managers, accustomed to the previous power structure, resisted the inclusive protocols. 2 resigned rather than adapt. Others grudgingly complied while searching for ways to preserve their authority. The transformation wasn't instantaneous or universal. Real cultural change never is. What surprised me most was the steady stream of colleagues who visited my office to share their stories. Not just analysts, but managers, administrative staff, even a vice president, all described moments when their voices had been silenced, their contributions minimized. Many thanked me for breaking a pattern they'd believed unchangeable. "I was ready to quit next month," admitted Tariq, a brilliant systems architect whose recommendations had been repeatedly shelved. "Watching you stand your ground gave me permission to defend my own work." 9 months after the infamous meeting, Waterstone hosted its annual strategic planning conference. Novia asked me to deliver the opening address to over 300 employees, a platform traditionally reserved for C-suite executives. Standing at the podium, looking out at faces both familiar and new, I recognized the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about personal vindication. It represented a fundamental restructuring of how power and voice operated within our organization. "A company's greatest asset isn't its client list or its capital reserves," I began. "It's the collective intelligence of its people. All its people, regardless of title or tenure. When we silence voices, we sacrifice innovation. When we suppress questions, we enable failure." I paused, noticing a figure at the back of the room, Preston, visiting for exit interviews related to his severance agreement. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. "Transformation isn't comfortable," I continued. "It disrupts established patterns and challenges deeply held assumptions about who deserves to be heard. but on the other side of that discomfort lies our full potential as an organization. After my speech, as attendees dispersed to breakout sessions, Preston approached. 9 months had visibly changed him, the confident swagger replaced by a more measured demeanor. "Congratulations on your success," he said stiffly. "Thank you." I maintained professional courtesy despite the churning in my stomach. He hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. "I've been reflecting on my leadership approach. There were blind spots in my methods." This wasn't an apology, not really, but perhaps the closest approximation his pride would allow. "We all have blind spots," I acknowledged. "The difference is whether we're willing to examine them when they're exposed." He nodded curtly and walked away. I watched him go, surprised to find the anger I'd carried had diminished. What remained was something more complex: understanding of the insecurity that drives suppression, recognition that systems enable the Preston Whitneys of the world as much as individual choices create them. The revenge I'd inadvertently executed wasn't about destroying one person's career. It was about dismantling structures that protected the powerful at the expense of the valuable. The most profound victory wasn't watching Preston's downfall. It was witnessing the emergence of voices previously silenced, including my own. 1 year after that fateful meeting, Waterstone's internal metrics revealed the impact of our cultural transformation. Employee retention improved by 37%. Innovation benchmarks increased across all departments. Most tellingly, client satisfaction scores reached their highest levels in company history. Novia called me to her office to discuss the results. "The Elmstead contract was just the beginning," she said, showing me the quarterly numbers. "Your team's approach has become a case study in how diversity of thought drives business outcomes." "It's not just my team," I pointed out. "The entire company has embraced more inclusive practices." "Because of the precedent you established." She slid a folder across her desk. "Which brings me to this. I'm creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer. The role will focus on identifying emerging talent and ensuring all voices contribute to our strategic direction. I'd like you to consider it." The offer represented everything I'd fought for: institutional recognition of the value and perspectives from all levels. Yet, something held me back from immediate acceptance. "I appreciate the opportunity," I said carefully, "but I'd like to propose an alternative structure." Novia raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Rather than concentrating innovation oversight in one position, create a rotating council drawn from different departments and levels. Each member serves a limited term, ensuring fresh perspectives continuously enter the conversation." She studied me with newfound respect. "You're declining a C-suite promotion to propose a more distributed power structure?" "I'm suggesting that institutionalizing the voice of any single person, even with the best intentions, recreates the problem in new form." A slow smile spread across her face. "Write up the proposal. If it's as thoughtful as I suspect it will be, we'll implement it immediately." 2 weeks later, Waterstone announced the formation of its first Innovation Council, 12 members from across the company, representing diverse backgrounds, experiences, and organizational levels. I would chair the inaugural council, helping establish protocols before transitioning leadership to ensure no single voice became dominant. In many ways, this system was my true revenge against the culture of suppression. Not just changing who held power, but transforming how power itself operated within our organization. The morning after the announcement, I arrived early to find a small package on my desk. Inside was an elegant silver pen with an inscription, "For the words that changed everything." The note accompanying it read simply, "Thank you for teaching us to listen. N.E." I picked up the pen, testing its weight in my hand. Sometimes the most powerful act isn't speaking louder. It's finding precisely the right words at exactly the right moment, then having the courage to ensure they're heard. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to know why. Have you ever been silenced in a professional setting? Did you find a way to make your voice heard? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the courage to speak up when it matters most. And if you want more stories about transforming workplace dynamics through small acts of courage, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Remember, change doesn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes all it takes is a simple note. passed at exactly the right moment to completely rewrite the ending.